It's one-on-one with Shady El Nahas. Shady, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm first of all, congrats on winning the gold medal 10 days ago at the Pan American Senior Championships in Mexico, and also on winning the bronze medal at the Grand Slam in Hungary. That's last month, 35 days ago. So congratulations on that. For the record, I'm a big fan of yours. I find that you're a very intense competitor, and when you're on the mat, you always bring the fire and that passion. And it's you can see it in the photos, you can see it in the videos, and it's great to see a Canadian judo player with such intensity. Before we get into the specifics in regards to your recent, your recent tournaments, I wanted to just do some icebreaker questions. The first one is they're not all related to judo. The first one kind of is. Well, it is. First one is, what's the best piece of judo advice you've ever been given?
I think is to pace yourself. I think that's the most important thing because I used to always rush and that would end really good or really bad. There was never in between. Or if I'm winning, I would still want to attack and like fight because that's just how I am. But I learned to pace myself. So, like for example, my bronze fight in Budapest, I like scored and then I didn't. I played it safe, which is the smarter way to do it.
Interesting. Second question is, now you've traveled to many countries around the world for judo tournaments. Which country is your favorite to compete in and why?
Actually, yeah, I was discussing that with my physio, and for in 2019 we took 49 plans, which is ridiculous.
Wow.
Yeah. Uh, honestly, uh, I'd say basic answer, but I'd say Japan. Japan, I like the environment. It makes it more serious. I think it's more you feel the vibe of like the crowd is kind of quiet, but it's filled with crowd. Like it's packed, so it's kind of intense. You feel it in the air. It's different from any other competition. Paris is amazing too, but I don't know. I think Japan because that's where it's like that's the city of judo, right? So every time I travel there, it's special.
For sure. It seems like every judo player always tends to say Japan is the heart and soul of the sport, of course. Next question for you. If you could instantly become fluent in any language, what language would it be?
Um, that's a good answer. Good question. Sorry. I'd
So,
say, uh, probably Russian, honestly, because I speak Arabic, French, and English, and French is very similar to a lot of languages. But I think Russian because I struggle most with the Georgians and Russians in the competition. So maybe that way I'll help. I can hear the coaches or something, and I'll understand what's going on a little bit more.
you know what? I think you might be onto something there. There's definitely an advantage in learning a new language. And as you mentioned, judokas from that part of the world are extremely tough. And we'll get into that speaking about your, I think you fought Armin Adamian recently, I think in Hungary. And we'll get into that in a bit. But the next question is, if Tupac Shakur were to face off against the notorious BIG in a judo match, who would win and how would they win? Let's get into that. Let's break it
Okay,
down.
so I'd bet my money on Tupac. Tupac
Okay.
was always I love this. I like in Russia actually. I was alone for 2 weeks for camp, and that's all I watched. I watched like the documentary. I'd like try to solve the whole mystery of it by
Right.
myself.
Right.
I'd say Tupac. Tupac was more intense and very emotional, and that's kind of how I am too. So, and Biggie's more relaxed, and
Right.
he's more of a chill gangster. So I'd say Tupac. I think Tupac's very emotional and very aggressive and very like in it. So I'd bet my money on Tupac.
Interesting. How would you describe Tupac as if Tupac was a judoka? What? How would you describe him in terms of his
Aggressive. Oh,
judo? In
yeah,
terms of his
100%.
judo, yeah.
Yeah, very aggressive. Very fights with his emotion more than anything. Always attacking, and like it's kind of like me, honestly. Like very open the way he fights. So either he'll get countered or he'll throw something like that. I think.
And how about Biggie?
That's a tough one. I'd say Biggie would be more. Give him. He wins in the first 2 minutes of the fight, or he'll
Right.
gas out. Maybe.
maybe the first 30 seconds, you know.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know about Biggie, but rest in peace to both
yeah.
hip hop legends. Uh, last question for you, actually. If you could choose any two famous people, or maybe not famous, but people you admire that maybe are not famous, to have dinner with, who would they be?
Uh, Honestly, yeah. Who would it be? Uh, RIP, of course, Kobe Bryant, 100%. I think his mentality, I would like learn a lot from it. And I think he was just very smart business wise and everything. I think that would help me a lot. And uh, my grandfather, I think, from my dad's side, I've never met him because he passed away before I met him. My brother did, but I heard a lot of great stories of him and like his character and everything. And even when I was in Egypt, everybody on the street knew him. So I think that would have been, I would have learned a lot from him. Maybe even been a better person in some sense, you know.
That's very cool. Which city in Egypt did you grow up in?
I was born in Alexandria.
Okay.
Yeah, so we had the beach and everything. So that was,
Right, that's right on the Mediterranean, right? In the
yes,
north.
yes,
Right.
yeah.
Interesting. So now, Shadi, we'll transition into judo competition specific questions. Now, of course, in February 2020, you competed at the Paris Grand Slam and the Dusseldorf Grand Slam. Then, of course, everything got urinagied into oblivion due to this COVID-19 global pandemic. And of course, the 2020 Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo were canceled, along with just about everything and anything. It took 7 months before combat sports fans could watch the best in the world compete in the international sport of judo. My first question for you on this topic specifically is, how were those 7 months of no judo competition for you? How did you feel? What was, what were you thinking about during that time? And I guess, how would you summarize those 7 months of no competition?
Honestly, I kind of needed a break. Of course, 7 months is a little bit long, but like I said, I took 49 planes in 2019. Injuries, my body was destroyed. So I needed a break. And I think that was very healthy for me to refresh my mind because, like in Paris, I got fifth and I was so close to medal, but I didn't feel good. Dusseldorf, I threw the guy and then I landed in Osaikomi, which is like a really stupid way to lose. So my mind was kind of tired and my body, of course. So I think that 7 months was good. And also, I'm a very like relaxed human being, I'd say, except when I'm fighting, of course. And I didn't give it much thought. Of course, when the Olympics, we got like 7, 8 emails saying, "Oh, Olympics are canceled. Never mind. We're sending our athletes. We're not sending our athletes." So it was like a roller coaster, on and off. So uh, I learned after a couple months. I was like, it is what it is. I'm just gonna go with the flow, and whatever happens, happens. I try to stay in shape as best as I can, with my brother, of course, more helping me because we live together, thank God, and we both are athletes and we do the same sport. Uh, but yes, like of course it sucked because after a few months you just want to fight, you know, like you get the urge of fighting. And but at the end of the day, I learned to like just not give it much thought at the end until there's actually something happening. There were so many competitions about to happen, like, oh, we're scheduling this, and they would get canceled after a week. So you kind of learn to just, I'll like, even with Budapest, I was like, I'll believe it when I'm there, when I'm on the mats, you know. So that's how I'm taking things till now.
That's a really positive approach to it. Did in those 7 months, were you ever did you like somewhat lose hope in terms of the probability of getting back on the mats and fighting?
Uh, Honestly, like I thought we'd be on the mats earlier because I don't know. I thought in my head I was like, oh, like this pandemic is gonna get resolved. We're taking the right precautions by quarantining and everything. So I never lost hope, but I was like I don't see the Olympics happening, blah blah blah, and which is what happened. But I wasn't disappointed honestly because right now I feel a lot stronger than I felt a year ago. So everything kind of worked out, I guess. Of course, like during the quarantine, I was sad and I was going through stuff outside of judo too.
Right.
So my mind was just wasn't there, you know. But now I think I'm like the happiest I've been competing.
That's awesome, man. And I think a lot of fight fans are really happy to see judo back, in competition in October. Obviously, Canadian fans are happy to see the national team competing and making the podium. Tell us a bit about your brother. You say you guys live together, you train together. He's also a competitor. Tell us about that dynamic, being siblings in the same sport.
I think without him, I would have quit judo 100%. When we first started, I hated the sport, and I would get like my butt kicked all the time, especially by him. So I kind of learned like, and if he wasn't there, I would have been a completely different fighter. I started off as a righty, and then my brother would beat me up so bad at training that I switched into to being a lefty, and I'm a lefty now, and I think that's like, a, I think lefties are better because I'm a lefty, in judo. No, honestly, like he was always been there for me. If you watch my fights, you're gonna see me always looking at my coach, then looking at my brother, and I'm always on like that's always I do at the competitions. I don't look at anybody else. I block everything else. That's always my routine. Look at my coach, look at my brother. And Mohab knows my judo better than anybody, so he's always helping me and he's always warming up with me. And before every final or every final block, or if I have a fight against somebody strong, I give him a call, and he just tells me what to do.
That's really cool, man. I think it's awesome to have a strong sibling who's involved in the sport and giving you that support mentally and also as a training partner. You're 22, you're right. How old is he?
He's 24, 2 years
Okay, so
older.
2 year difference.
Yeah,
Okay, so that's pretty close in age.
yeah.
Now, what's your pre-tournament routine? Is there anything you do to stay focused and energized prior to a tough a tough tournament? Like the day of, what do you do generally?
Honestly, I always switch my routine because I couldn't find a comfort zone until like last three competitions, and yeah, that was bad because always every time we'd go somewhere different, there was different stuff, right? So I couldn't do the same routine always, but I found something I could do. I always make weight, everything's good, relax, and then competition days when like I get into my routine. So I have to tie my belt in a specific way, so the IGF emblem has to be facing outside, and I was buy like an energy drink, not energy drink, like Powerade or Gatorade or something,
Mhm.
a Coke bottle and water, and I always have to take a sip of Coke, Powerade, water before every fight.
Interesting. It's funny. All sorts of people have different routines
Yeah, yeah.
and different just to get into their zone, and it's interesting to hear yours. Now, like if I were, I'm a fan of this sport, but I'm a fan of other combat sports, as many people are. If it's mixed martial arts, if it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu, if it's freestyle or Greco-Roman wrestling, and I'm a huge fan of the sport of judo, and I'm glad to see it back as far as tournaments being available for fans to watch. And if I were to explain the sport in terms of just usually when you explain the sport, in baseball, you want to show a home run, right? In boxing, you want to show a knockout. Uh, if I were to introduce someone to the sport, I'd probably show a highlight reel of your throws because they're dynamic, but there's also a lot of emotion. When you throw someone, I was there in Montreal when I felt the entire earth shake when you threw the German competitor there and the way you reacted. It was there was a lot of passion and a lot of fire. Sometimes you don't see that sort of reaction by all judo players, right? Some are more composed, some are more they don't sell it, they don't show that emotion for a variety of different reasons. But I'm a fan of seeing that raw emotion from competitors. My question for you, I'm just framing this question here. How would you describe your judo philosophically, and what are your like strategic considerations that define why and how you fight? What is it in your mind that makes you want to fight, and how would you speak about judo to someone who doesn't know anything about the sport?
Well, for me, what motivates me and everything is I want to be the best. I want an Olympic medal. I've been That's been my goal since the London Olympics. I've seen a highlight of the London Olympics. I'm like, wow, I need to win this competition. I need to win the Olympics. And honestly, if I'd explain judo to somebody, I'd say it's more of a will to fight, a will to like the will to be a winner. Uh, of course, it's complicated. There's a lot of shidos and everything, but I think the beauty of it is like it takes so much effort to get to be able to throw or like pin or armbar or choke an opponent that you don't see. Like if you look at somebody, two people fighting, you're like, oh, like yes, they're fighting and everything, but you don't realize how much of a toll it takes to get a good grip to be able to throw. So I'd explain, I'd be like, to just get a good grip is so much like effort. So imagine when you see somebody flying and falling on their back. I think that's beautiful, honestly. Like the aspect of judo is a beautiful concept. And yeah, I think also that like judo, the sport of it is like to be a tamed person, you know, like you don't show your personality as much. But that's just not who I am. I mean, if I in the moment I feel like screaming after I throw somebody, I will. If I feel like doing nothing, I won't do anything. It's just what like kind of takes over me. You know, when I throw somebody a big throw, it kind of took over me. I think there was a lot of stress coming in that competition, and they posted a video, for example, saying, "Oh, will the Canadian be able to win gold at home?" And that stressed me out. That really stressed me out. I was like I need to do good, right? And my family was here, like so. It was a lot stressful. And the German beat me in literally 2 weeks before in China, right?
Right.
So it was a lot of emotion amped up, and it just came out. Looking at it now, everybody makes fun of me. It's like, "Ugh, like you screamed like an idiot," but honestly, yeah, it was. I looked stupid, but I love the feeling, so I don't care.
What people are making fun of you for that, for real?
Well, yeah, if you go on the Judo Gallery Instagram video of it, people are
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's so disrespectful." He like screamed, "That's not the spirit of judo." I'm like, "Spirit of judo is to be a fighter. You can scream, you can do whatever. It's just judo doesn't have really. You gotta be a certain way, right? Just be a good fighter, be a respectful human being. The code of conduct of judo is to be a good person overall, right? So it doesn't matter if you scream or not. It's the way. It's a fighter's way, you know, fighter's life."
I think from my perspective, those sorts of reaction probably have more relevance to a broader audience because they see someone fighting, they see someone in the thick of competition, giving it their all, and at that moment of victory, erupting with joy, pride, a variety of emotion. And I think fight fans from other sport can see that sort of imagery and relate to it. I wouldn't say it's stupid. I think, if anything, it's showing honest, raw emotion as opposed to maybe an overtamed, robotic sort of movement.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm looking at it from a marketing point of view, and the way I see it, I think most people, to be honest, would relate to that. And it's who you are, right? In the fight, you're fighting, you're being yourself, and I don't think personally, I don't think there's an issue with it. And I was there in Montreal in watching that fight, and when that happened, I'll tell you, like that whole place went berserk. Everyone lost their damn mind. I mean, if the camera had panned out to people in the audience, they would have had an equal sort of reaction to you in that moment because it was simply spectacular. So for fight fans, I think overall, keep being yourself, man. I think it's great to see young talent celebrate their hard-earned victories. So we're going to move on now to the Grand Slam in Hungary. This was in October. This was 7 months after you guys were unable to compete. Your first opponent that day, I believe, was a Hungarian named Sombar Veg. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing your name. Sorry about that if I am. You finished the match in 80 seconds. Is there anything significant about that match that you want to talk about?
Honestly, I did a left Tsunagi, and that was my first left Tsunagi in a competition, right? It's like a Morote Tsunagi. I did a Ippon Tsunagi in Budapest, but a Morote is like very, very weird for a tall person to do that. And it was very unexpected. I didn't plan in my head to do it. It just literally happened. He took my sleeve, and I was kind of blocked because I kind of have issues with lefties, and it just literally, that's the first time I throw without, just it came to me, right? And I was very surprised after I walked off the mat. I was like, did that really just happen? So that was pretty cool.
So you didn't plan that of it. It's
No,
just
not at all. I was very surprised how it happened, honestly.
And speaking of height, you're 6'3", huh?
Yes.
And generally most of the competitors, and currently you're ranked number 7.
Yes.
And most of, I think, are you not the tallest in the minus 100 on generally?
I'm quite tall,
Mhm.
but not the tallest. I think there's like the Belarusian is 6'6" or something like that, 6'5".
Okay.
Yeah, so there's a few people taller than me, but I'm one of the tallest, I think.
How do you find being a tall fighter generally in that division? Do you find it's advantageous? It's and for people who are watching who don't know what under 100 kilo would be, under 220 pounds, right? Yeah. So speak to us about height in judo, particularly in that division. Is it advantageous? If so, how?
For me, it's advantageous because I like high grip. Of course, I'm gonna utilize my height to my advantage, but also it also depends on the style. Like some people prefer fighting taller guys so they can drop under them. But to me, I'm blessed to be tall, thank God, and yeah, I think I use it to my advantage. I don't do a lot of drops. I don't do a lot of really funky stuff. I like just utilize what I have. My judo's pretty simple: high grip or like under to get the ogoshi, and I just pull you towards me. I kind of lift you to my height, so you're kind of on your tippy toes. So it's easier to unbalance you, you know. So that's my mentality when I fight. Or if I do like a coach, sneaky coachy, they don't realize it because I'm so tall. They're like, he'll never do that. So.
Interesting. Moving on to your second opponent, it was the Egyptian Ramadan Darwish, and you threw him and pinned him for the finish. What can you highlight from this match? And I think the last time you fought him was in Montreal, I believe. And it's funny because at the time it appeared that he was physically. I'm talking about Montreal. He seemed. I mean, he's been around for quite some time. He's a veteran of this sport, and he's generally very physically strong, as most competitors are in your division, in all divisions, quite frankly. But in Montreal, I recall watching him fight you, and he seemed to physically to be stronger than you at that time. But this time around, from my point of view, it seemed that you were more aggressive, quicker, and frankly, much stronger than him. Would it be fair to say that?
I felt so, yeah. I think that was very true. He beat me in 30 seconds or even less in Montreal. I think it was mostly because I was just stressed. I was very stressed, and
wow. So that was stress.
I was 100% stress. Yeah,
because you were in your home country.
My home country and like all the pressure and everybody's eyes on me. I kind of folded under pressure, but I think I learned from that, and now I think I perform way better under pressure because having him, I honestly had that draw. I had in that my draw, I had 3 or 4 guys that already beat me previously, so it was kind of like my revenge bracket, you know. So
Right.
yeah, so it was. I felt the strongest I've ever felt in my life in Budapest. Yeah, and I felt fastest. It was my best. It was the first time I feel 100% in a competition. So I was like,
in this particular
really
match, it seemed like you were relentless with your attacks of him. You kind of overwhelmed him, and the momentum and the confidence was only compounding over time. And he seemed overwhelmed. And I mean, you beat him in a decisive fashion. And it's interesting because I think he won in Montreal. Did he not make the podium?
he got gold.
He got gold, right? And I think and you made the podium as well, right, in Montreal?
Yeah, I lost him in the finals. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, you fought.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right,
yeah.
right. So it was interesting because you heard the Egyptian national anthem as well as and the Canadian flag was up, which is a very unique sort of situation for someone like yourself who's Canadian, of course, and has Egyptian roots. You were born in Egypt. Well, what's it like being a Canadian of Egyptian of a background, fighting fellow Egyptians? Is there? Do you guys talk in the back and say? Is there a certain bond? I should say.
Yeah, 100%. We're super close. Me and Ramadan are really good friends, and
okay.
I was singing the national anthem even when I lost the
Egyptian. Oh no way! That's anthem. Hilarious.
So we're like, there's no rivalry, there's no pressure. Like we're really good friends, and whoever is the best man that day was gonna win, and that's how we take it. I think.
It's not. Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
No. I was like, it was like a big change, of course, from switching to Egypt to Canada, but I think I'm finally acclimated and like we're comfortable, and I still hang out with my Egyptian teammates. Well, of course not during COVID, but before COVID happened and everything. So it's a good environment. So we help each other during camps and everything. So it's pretty good.
It's cool to see that in judo that even your competitors you have a friendly relationship with and you train with them. I don't think that necessarily you see that in other combat sports, especially on the professional side. The rivalries tend to be over dramatized. both in terms of in order to sell the fight, but some are real rivalries
Yeah.
and become way too personal and too dramatic. But anyways, moving on to your next match after beating Mr. Darwish, you went on to fight Arman Adamian.
Yes.
I think you fought him twice this year. I think he's beaten you in both matches, correct? Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry to say that.
No.
I'm not, but tell us about this match. It was quite the fight. I can say, I mean, your coach and that small crowd was like, there was a small crowd, obviously, because of COVID. You can't have a packed house. But it's fascinating because now that arenas have smaller crowds, you can hear just about everything. You could hear the competitors, the coaches. I mean, before you could, but now you could really intimately hear everything, right? So tell us about this match and, lead us through it from what you recall.
I think it's getting progressively better for me against him. I started off in Russia like 2 years ago. I got destroyed, and then every time it got better. And I think during that fight, I rushed myself for 1 second, and he caught me with a Wazari, so that's a half a point. And then after that, I just controlled the whole fight. But he stayed defensive, of course, because he was winning with a Wazari. And as the fight went on, I gained more confidence, and I almost got him. I literally carried him on my hip, and then last second it didn't get it, like it wasn't a score. But I came out that fight. Usually I'm disappointed. I'm like, oh, I came out that fight proud because honestly, when it matters 100% at the Olympics, I think I'm gonna end up being on the winning side. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. And speak to us about like your relationship with your coach, because as you mentioned, you're always looking to your coach in between, and you're always looking to your brother if he's there as well. Speak to us about your coach.
When I first moved to actually that's funny. When I first moved to the National Center, the INS in Montreal, yeah, I was a really bad athlete, so I was like a lot to handle, I think. But progressively, he kind of kept bringing me in to like get my stuff together, and that helped me a lot. And since then, every competition, the trust just kept getting better. And then when my former coach Michel Almeida had to leave, he took over, and I think at that point, that's when I was like, okay, 100% trust him. And now he knows my judo, and I think the best thing about him is he's really good at calming me down in a motivational way, So I think our relationship's only gonna get better and better from there.
Yeah, no, it's awesome to see him on the sidelines coaching. You guys clearly have. It appears like you have a good bond, at least on camera. It seems like that in terms of communicating to your athletes. Moving on now to the repechage match against the Hungarian Szurnyk. I'm sorry, probably mispronouncing. Hungarian names are tough to pronounce. No. But tell us about this particular this match here.
Oh, he's a beast. He's really powerful. But since I was a kid, I've always been like, okay, this guy. I think I can beat them once I'm on the IGF circuit. And he was one of them. I was like, he's a beast. He's always been one of the top, right? So I kind of always had this vendetta in my head that I want to fight him, want to beat him. And that happened. I think I did. The way I threw him was very sneaky, and I was like very happy to end up winning that way. So it worked out well. He was very strong the first minute of the fight, but then as the fight went on, I gained more confidence, and I was like, okay, usually the repechage is the hardest fight to win, in my opinion, because mentally you just lost a fight, right? So you're like, oh, he came off a loss. So yeah, honestly, I felt pretty good fighting him. Of course, I almost got caught a couple of times. He choked me, and I kind of almost tore my tongue because my mouth was clenched against my tongue.
Wow!
And then after I was like, okay, I got out of this. I can't lose now. Like I sacrificed my tongue to not lose.
That's awesome. And it's interesting. You said you were targeting these competitors like for years. You said I can beat this person, and you went on beating them. So that's tell us a little bit. Who else is on that hit list?
Well, the current world champion.
You hit all of them, or are they all crossed out now? Or?
No, there's still a few. Like I still didn't fight Lopartilani. That's like he was my idol as a kid, and now he's my rival. So I'd love to fight him in competition.
Sorry, you've never fought him? Have you met him at any training camps or anything?
Yeah, like we know each other. We shake hands and everything, but I've never fought him. So that's on my bucket list. The reigning world champion, Fonseca, I fought him in Budapest in a camp 4 years ago. 4 years ago, I think. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And then now it's 2-0 for me. So I think, and he's the world champion. He's not anybody, right? So
Right.
him too. Yeah, so it was pretty good. Yeah.
And it's funny because when you threw the Hungarian in the repertoire match, his reaction was that of like, I don't want to say shock, but he was clearly frustrated, and you could see that raw emotion. I guess losing at home is no one wants to lose in front of a
Yeah.
home crowd.
Yeah.
But moving on now, speak to us about your bronze medal match against the Belgium Tomas Nikiforov, I think it is.
Yeah. Like I said, I fought Nikiforov in Vizé in 2016 and 2017 in the semifinals, and I lost both of those fights, right, against him. So kind of in my head, I was like, okay, I'm gonna train because he's always been one of the top, even though he was injured out for a year and a half. He came back and fought for a bronze, right? So that's a big deal. So in my head, I was like, okay, I've been working my butt off. Like this is the time to show it, right? And I fought him, and I felt completely different from 4 years ago, of course, but I didn't expect it to feel that different, right? And like me feeling that way, I was like, wow, I'm feeling pretty confident I can win this, right? And that's what happened.
Now, the different in the sense that you were physically stronger, or your movement was elaborate on different. Obviously, you're a different judo player than you were 4 years ago. But give us elaborate on that difference.
Yeah, like honestly, during the whole competition, the one thing in my head after every fight, I was like, wow, I feel strong. And I've never said that before in a competition. I've always been the physically weaker person, always, any competition. So I had to utilize my speed and everything. So now that I utilize my speed and I feel as strong, maybe even stronger sometimes against people, I was like, thank God the Olympics are postponed. Like by then I'll be a beast, right? So hopefully.
That's
yeah,
interesting.
if God willing.
Yeah, I know.
If God willing, be perfect.
Right. Sorry, I interrupted there. You were saying?
No, I was like, if God willing, and like I keep staying that way, and I'm injury free, I think I have a really big chance of doing good at the Olympics.
And I mean, you're 22, and you're only going to get physically stronger and stronger. I was looking at some of your previous interviews where you were talking about hitting the gym, right? In terms of putting on more muscle mass. What have you done in terms of like in the last, say, 2 years in terms of training? What other additional forms of training have you done to kind of become stronger or to refine your technique as a whole?
Honestly, being in the gym and training camps, of course, training camps, you fight the stronger, tougher people and like the top. So that kind of helps. But honestly, like during COVID, I was just in the gym after quarantining, of course, when we were able to like go to the gym and everything. Or when we went to Lethbridge for camp with the team, I was just in the gym, and like Nicolas Thibault, our strength and conditioning coach, and he just gave me a really good program. I've been following it. And in January, I was barely doing like 225 on the bench. Now I do 315. So wow. It's been like a really good progress. Yeah.
Jeez, that's nuts. So just summarize the match, the bronze medal match against this competitor here. I think he was injured, right? So he came back from a major injury. But tell us about this match. What happened in this match? How did you beat him?
He was on my list of the people I believe that can win that were from the top. Honestly, I felt really confident going into the bronze. The bronze is always like a medal and a check or nothing, so it kind of like sucks. But I felt really good from the first exchange. I was like, okay, I can do this. And always every competition, I believe I'm gonna win the whole thing. That's just my mentality. And yeah, once I got the Wazari, I was like, okay, I kind of like, because I like he was up in the air, but I didn't finish it fully, right? In my head, I was like, oh, I really want to try to go for a big throw again. But then I look at my coach, he's like, don't you dare. You know, the look he gives, he's like, don't you freaking dare. It's like, okay. And I just like really held it and controlled the fight. And I was like, okay. Yeah. It was more of a more tactical fight after I threw him. And then after like the last 2 minutes, I was literally just gripping and moving. I barely did any attacks, which is not me, but now it is.
Right. So you're evolving in your approach, right? As any competitor, you're adding more to the game, and obviously listening to your coach. Now, obviously, you won the bronze there. Congratulations. Now, speak to us about the Pan Ams where you captured the gold medal. How was that experience overall?
Yeah, I was exhausted after Budapest because we had such a roller coaster of a trip. We're gonna stay 5 weeks abroad and go straight to Pan Ams. but of course that didn't happen because of COVID. So we had to go back, quarantine for 2 weeks. Then I had only 2 trainings of judo. Then I went to Mexico, so I had no trainings for 2 weeks, right?
Wow.
So I was there, and honestly, last year's Pan Ams, it was easy except like my final fight. So I was going to this one, I was like, okay, like this should be like a little bit harder, but I can do this again. And it was a lot harder because I fought my teammate Kyle, and I fought Florentino, who was 90, but he moved up and he was really strong. And I fought Buzacarini, the Brazilian, which is really strong. Like they're all really good internationally too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because usually in Pan Ams, you get a first easy fight, then it's harder, then it's the hardest, right? But this one was hard, hard, hard. So it was challenging. I was very tired after the competition, but it went smoothly. Like thank God.
Now you recently tweeted that I quote here: "I feel alive when I'm on the mats." Elaborate on that. What is it about judo and training and competing that makes you feel alive?
I was very tired before the COVID, and I was very, of course, like I love the sport, but I was just tired, and my body just and my mind couldn't take it. Like I was just drained, and I needed a break. So every time I would just go from trip to trip, it would take a huge toll on me, and I kind of like wasn't happy. You know, I was like, fine, another competition. It's almost done. It's almost done. Now I'm like, when I'm on the mats, last two tournaments, I wasn't like, oh, it's almost done. I was like, no, I want to fight some more, right? Right after Budapest, literally, finished competition, slept, woke up at 7 a.m., switched hotels, and went to training to do another camp. So, and I didn't, usually I take a few breaks, but I was so excited to fight again that I did. And I think now is like, if you see me at competitions, like middle fights against Adam, and I was like, when I almost threw him, I smiled and I was losing, and I was like, but I'm enjoying myself, right? And I think that was the biggest thing about it, is like, I want to enjoy myself when I'm fighting. I don't want to feel like it's a burden on me. And again, that was the happiest I felt competing last two tournaments.
That's awesome, man. Personal question: Do you document your how you're feeling? Like, do you write in a sports diary? Oh, you do, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I wrote. Yeah, I've been doing that for 2 years now. I'm finishing my fourth journal,
Okay.
writing stuff down. So yeah, like I'm not a good person to speak about my feelings or like explain myself and everything.
Right.
But yeah, I think that's a good way to deal with the stress and however you're feeling, regardless of being a sport or not.
For sure. And do you guys you have access to sports psychologists? I would imagine.
100%. Yeah, I talked to them. I have a sports psychologist. Yeah.
Yeah, and how's that experience as an elite, an international judo competitor? How important is it to have the access to a sports psychologist? How would you say it's changed your approach to competition, or has it?
Yeah, before I tried it, I've always been reluctant to like do it because I was like, oh, like I'm not good at speaking, I'm like it's not gonna help me, blah blah blah. But I've tried it. I've done 4 or 5 I've done 4 or 5 times in like the last year, and yeah, it helped me a lot. Like you realize stuff you don't realize that can help you calm down. And I think the main thing I got is to like control my nerves before competing. Right, I found ways to relax or like stuff to do to keep me distracted or to calm down the nerves or use it in a positive way. And I think that's the best thing as an athlete to do, because you have so much nerves and like there's so much pressure. Like for example, Abe and Maruyama, December 13th, it's like the winner of one fight is going to go to the Olympics. That's, imagine the stress of that, right?
Wow.
And I think a sports psychologist will help with that aspect to deal with it and to use it as fuel more than something negative, right?
Yeah, I know it's fascinating. I mean, the reality is you guys are competing at the most competitive stage for your sport, and the pressure is always, I would imagine, is always on. And to having access to those professionals, I think really enhances your competitive mind state going into these fights. Now, question for you: do you plan on moving up, because you're in the under 100 kilos and you're 6'3"? You're 22. I'm going to imagine that let's say you probably could gain more weight if you wanted down the road. You're 22. Let's say, like, do you foresee yourself staying in this division or moving up, moving down? What are the plans? Are you thinking about that, or?
I like where I'm at. I like the -100 division. I feel like the plus, well, there's a lot of -100 that move to plus, like Hank Roll and Tutishvili, and are killing it on the scene over there. but I prefer 100. I think it's more competitive. I think they're still athletic. I think like I want a division where I still feel athletic, where I'm still fast, where I can use less and plus, of course, but I think right now 100 is one of the hardest divisions, like the minus 100, and I enjoy being in that. I think it's one of the most stacked. We're all like stacked as in we're all competitive. There's not really a like major number one in our division, and I think that just motivates me more to try to be that number one, right?
Yeah, it's nuts. I was looking at the list, the top 10 list, and I'm like, holy moly, man. This is just
Yeah,
it's like stacked. You're right. It's stacked like it's packed. It's like a pressure
yeah.
cooker of extremely driven, tough, and determined fighters. And you're on that list, obviously, number 7. What's next for you? When's your next tournament?
I think in January, there's beginning of January, there's the Masters, and it's the top 36 only fighting. Usually it was the top 16, but because of the Olympic qualification, they're doing the top 36. And those are major points. I think if I medal or win that competition, I'm kind of set. I'm set to stay in the top 8 for the Olympics.
Right on. And I just have 2 more questions for you. The question being, the next one being, what's one of the most, I think, you think, what in terms of being an international judo competitor, particularly fighting in Canada, where the sport, of course, is popular, but maybe not as popular as, say, France or even Brazil for that matter. Like, what's it like being an international competitor, traveling all over the world and competing in this sport? What's the number one you think misconception of judo competition at this level that you're at?
I think honestly, I think like for any amateur, we're considered amateurs, sport like athletes. I don't think people realize how much of a struggle and how much of grit you need to keep going, right? I don't like it's. I think one of the hardest thing is to win a medal in the Olympics. I was watching even Khabib and Henry Cejudo, which are like Henry Cejudo is a gold medalist in wrestling. They were saying how much harder it is to make the Olympics than it is to win a UFC title, right? So I think people who don't understand the life like of just an Olympic athlete or somebody trying to make the Olympics, how much grit you need to like to have. Of course, we're blessed to be traveling all the time and discovering new stuff, and I thank God every day for this. But at the same time, you need so much mental strength to keep going, right? And I think people that think amateur sports don't think it's like as complicated or as I don't think it's just as appreciated as a pro athlete, of course, because pro athletes like they make it's more of a show where we're just trying to be the best, right? So I think that's the only difference. And but I wouldn't change it for anything. I love what I do, and I hope I can keep doing that for a long time.
No, that's a really interesting answer, and it's one of those things that you tend to see a lot, particularly when you compare the pro and the amateur combat sports athlete. I think the following statement some people might not agree with, but I believe it to be true. I think making it to the Olympics alone is more of an achievement than winning a professional mixed martial arts title. I'm talking specifically to combat sports, whether it's judo, freestyle or Greco-Roman wrestling, boxing, taekwondo, karate now as well. I think making it to the Olympics, that alone, making it there, being there and competing is the biggest sporting achievement for any competitor, more so. And it's not to put down, professional mixed martial arts, but I think that is definitely more. It's competitive, but nowhere near. I mean, if you look at the volume, like how many fights do you do in one tournament? Probably upwards of 4 or 5, right? And I mean, in mixed martial arts, it's a different sport altogether. But it's funny how we're bombarded with a lot of interesting stories on the professional combat sports side, but I think the amateur side is slowly catching on. We're seeing more and more interesting stories from judo players as well as wrestlers and so on. Last question for you. I really appreciate you giving this interview. Last question for you. Where do you see yourself in like 4 years from now? What's the vision here?
Honestly, I was always like, before COVID, I was always like, yeah, Olympics, gold medal, this, right? But now I'm just gonna play it month by month, year by year, and see where it takes me. Hopefully, there's an Olympics. Hopefully, I medal. Hopefully, I get the gold because that's what I want, and hopefully that's gonna happen. But I don't honestly. I just want to be. I don't want to just be like, win a medal and then be forgotten. I want to be remembered in the sport. I want to be one of the greats of the sport, and hopefully in 4 years I can try to achieve that, right? And also I just want to say, like, people like you who understand the sport, like, I can tell you're a fight fan, right? Regardless of what. And people like you who help spread the sport, or even just amateur sport, like, we appreciate, like, I appreciate that a lot, so thank you for that.
Oh, thank you very much, man. And where can people follow you on social media?
My Instagram is Shady El Nahas, and my Twitter's the same. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right, man. Thank you very much for your time. I'm a big fan of yours, and I wish you all the best in your next competition. And hopefully, we'll get to interview you again. So have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Thank you.